Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to the new session, right? On Indian political thought. Can you all hear me? Okay, good, 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 good. Today we are going to start our discussions on Nehru's thought. A name certainly is familiar to all of you, and the person also has been in debate recently, and that was primarily due to some of his policy decisions, and as well as the way he was the way he was located, the way he was situated in the political context, right? In the political context of his time. So our endeavor would be to look at some of his ideas and in the process we'll try to look at the facts, and certainly there could be conclusions based on those facts. So as far as one's understanding of his ideas is concerned, so that depends how you locate the facts, how you put the facts in a specific context, and then you try to derive certain conclusions. Now certainly he was not an original thinker in my understanding, and he was trying to reflect upon the issues of his time, given his understanding that he had developed over the period during his interactions with the Western political ideas, and also to some extent the Indian traditions, Indian traditional values. Now, when one looks at Nehru, then we know him also through his writings, and some of you might have even looked at some of them. Say, for instance, Discovery of India. That's very popular writing on history that exists, written by Nehru. Then India and the World. It is another work that possibly one can look at in terms of understanding his views on international politics and interstate relations. Then an autobiography. He also wrote autobiography, and therein one may find some of his reflections in terms of his interactions with the society, in terms of his interactions with different political leaders. In fact, the way actually his life evolved, and where are we? That is yet another work possibly one can look at. Apart from that, a host of writings exist on Nehru. So different scholars have tried to look at Nehru and locate him in historical perspective, in sociological perspective, and of course from the point of view of politics, and that's what remains our concern. That's what remains our interest area, that how Nehru can be located in the political context, and how we can try to understand some of his ideas. Now, if you look at the diverse writings which exist either by Nehru himself or by different scholars who have written on Nehru, there are a few issues on which we can concentrate and which I would highlight as the main theme as far as Nehru's ideas were concerned. Main theme. This is the point I want to highlight and emphasize, and that is where the whole idea of democratic socialism one can look at, and related to yes. Okay, was anyone trying to say something? Okay, right. The whole idea of democratic socialism, right? What this is, I will come to that, and we will discuss it, during the course. But this also includes what possibly one can try to understand in terms of his ideas or his thinking on democracy, the way he looked at democracy, and the way he would look at the colonial rule and the issue of imperialism, and this also is linked to his policies with respect to other states, which takes a rather more developed shape when he would become the prime minister, and he would come up with his idea of non-alignment along with some of the other prominent leaders of his time, Tito or Marshal Tito and other the Indonesian leader, then the leader of Egypt. So that is the second aspect that we will look at. So the point I'm trying to make, that if we are trying to understand as far as Nehru's ideas are concerned, we can look at Nehru's ideas the way he tried to put them in the form of his writings, and what possibly one can locate in his speeches and various letters that he addressed to various political leaders, and of course to his daughter Gandhi. So that is one, if one is trying to look at the sources of his ideas. Second, one can look at Nehru, the way he conducted politics, meaning that Nehru's practice of politics. So that is something people have tried to look at in order to make out that whether Nehru was right in terms of putting some of his ideas into practice and giving them a practical shape, whether they turned out to be good for India, or whether they did more harm to the Indians than doing good to them. So that is something which remains open to debate, and people have debated, in fact, and debate still goes on. With that in the background, I would come to the idea of democratic socialism that one finds in Nehru. Now, why this is important for us to understand, because in my understanding, that is where you will find his political ideas to be concentrated, right, to be located. And this also would reflect that what kind of model he had in mind in terms of shaping India's socio-economic and political structures. Now, this, in my understanding, is in the first place a blueprint of his ideas of restructuring India. And the way he thought that can be done in India's case. Now again, as I told you, there would be gaps, there would be limitations, there would be a lot of problems that have been highlighted, throughout, and especially during the recent period, especially if one looks at during the past 6-7 years. So that is what that is what of course offers an alternative narratives to Nehru's thinking and Nehru's approach. So that, in a way, in my understanding, is a positive development, because there cannot be any consensus as far as a particular idea is concerned. So the moment there is a complete consensus on either approach or idea, that is where you become stagnant. So that's how you have narratives and counter narratives, and you have new facts emerging, and in the light of the new facts you have new theoretical propositions and new analysis which come up. So this is how one can look at as far as the whole debate is concerned. And in fact, this is what is the strength of the course that we are trying to understand. So the political thought not to be understood simply confined to the thinking process or ideas of an individual thinker situated in his time or contextualized in a given socio-political economic setup, rather than thinking and ideas would be seen to be transcending time and space, and that is where facts can be relooked at, facts can be reinterpreted, and during the course, possibly the point I made earlier, new facts would emerge, and this is how the cycle would go on, and there in the process there would be generation of knowledge and ideas. So this is what the whole approach is. This is what the whole endeavor is. Now, as far as Nehru was concerned, he of course had a lot of faith in socialism, and in fact it was Nehru who was instrumental in making socialism finding its roots, finding its way in Congress. And post-independence, this is how it has been understood, that it would become kind of official ideology. Now, official ideology, in a sense, that the way